Hey, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're really focusing this morning on raising corporate performance, and I'm delighted that we've got with us some incredible experts who have corporate background experience, they've got leadership experience, training experience. What I'd love to do as we focus on corporate performance is to just go around and introduce each other. So we've got Donald Drury, we've got Reem Burrows, Pradnya Leitner, and also Brian Dalmaso. How about you, Pradnya? Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your background and what your area of focus is right now.
Sure. I spent about 10 years, a decade in the corporate world, working for companies such as IBM and Salesforce. And my focus was on corporate sales, sales enablement and execution, and then global marketing leadership. Again, I'm immensely grateful for
Sorry, Pradnya. I'm going to introduce again. Can we all turn our phones off because there's some vibration going? I think someone's phone's going. Let's just make sure our phones are off. Sorry, Pradnya.
Yeah, no worries. We can
always
edit that out, so no worries at all, guys.
Awesome. I'm just going to start again, yeah?
Yep.
All right, my phone is on silent and no vibrate. All right, welcome everybody. This is Craig, and today we're focusing on raising corporate performance, and I'm delighted that we have a team of really experienced trainers and executives. We've got Donald Drury with us, we've got Reem Burrows, we've got Pradnya Leitner, and we've also got Brian Dalmaso. So let's just take a few seconds to go around and introduce ourselves, our background and our experience. Pradnya, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thank you, Craig. I spent about a decade in the corporate world working for great companies like IBM and Salesforce. And my focus at the time was on corporate sales enablement and execution, and then global marketing leadership. I'm immensely grateful for how corporate world sculpted me. Yet at the same time, I had this desire to serve the world in a different capacity, which is what brought me to becoming a consultant with Proctor Gallagher Institute.
Awesome. Wonderful to have you with us. Donald Drury. Don, why don't you share with us, a bit about your background and what your focus is now as well?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Craig. I actually spent a couple of decades in the corporate world. My focus has been in similar areas to Pradnya's, really focused on sales enablement, sales operations and training, really empowering global sales teams to be more effective and impactful in what they do. I worked in my career with global companies like the Xerox Corporation, the Bond ERP company, Kronos Incorporated, which is around the world in all the countries they operate, rated one of the best places to work. So pleased to be here today.
Awesome. Welcome. And Reem Burrows, why don't you tell us about yourself as well and what your focus is right now?
Yeah, thanks so much. Okay, so I've predominantly worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years. I did start at the age of 14. I just want to let you know that. But my main focus my main area was focusing on sales training, sales management, sales leadership. I worked for companies like Mylan, which is a global organization, then moved to Pfizer, which was one of the largest pharmaceutical organizations in the world, and then finally to Nevada Sandoz, and leading the Australian-New Zealand operation in the retail pharmacy space. My biggest focus has always been on how to get the best out of people. And so then I transitioned into my own organization called Dream Consulting to help organizations really empower every single one of their team members and enhance the results that organizations are experiencing today.
Wow. New Zealand was lucky to have you. And Brian Dalmaso, why don't you tell us about yourself as well?
Hey, Craig, thanks for having us, and thanks for inviting me on here. Yeah, my background is started off predominantly in mechanical engineering. I worked for General Electric Company for about 10 years as an engineer, and then I transferred careers into solar and the semiconductor industry, again in engineering, and eventually branched off on my own as an entrepreneur, studying architecture and construction, developed a construction firm that I've had for 20 years. And over the past 15 or 20 years, I've really become, I guess we would call a serial entrepreneur, and as of the last few years, really started working with and helping entrepreneurs and corporations in mindset training, shifting paradigms. And that's really what we're predominantly doing today as a consultant, is working with people and corporations all over the world, shifting their awareness on how people operate, especially in sales and management teams. And we're also blessed to be working with Bob Proctor in the Proctor Gallagher Consulting Company as one of the top consultants in the world right now. So very blessed.
Wonderful. We've got a great team here with us today. And look, Areem, I'd love to start with you and really focus on global corporate organizations. So, in your experience, what are the biggest challenges that global corporate organizations have, when it comes to sales and marketing performance and raising that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And after a lot of years working with large teams, the single biggest challenge for global organizations is always around that inevitable reporting and budgeting. It's really become kind of like a game when it comes to budgeting. And what happens is we all know in organizations and these large global organizations that you have to report back to the market. And when you're reporting back to the market, we also all know that you have to report back to your region head office with certain numbers and what you're going to deliver either in the next quarter, the next financial year. The game becomes what I call the sandbagging game. And it's all a matter of becoming very conservative, because once you submit your numbers to your head office, either wherever they're located in the world, that number is going to come back to you much larger than what you actually submitted. So everyone becomes very conservative. You spend so much time on reporting and justifying why the number is what it is, that paradigm, that conservative sandbagging paradigm, really sees itself going across the whole organization. And one of the things that I really, really have noticed is that organizations don't separate the budgeting process from day-to-day activities. So on a subconscious level, everyone starts to sandbag. They sandbag and justify everything that they're doing, and everything becomes realistic. We're just being realistic. And to me, whenever someone says I'm being realistic, I see it as being pessimistic. Because what we're doing with being realistic is we really we don't promote creativity or innovation at that point in time. You only do what you have to do to get that man-made number. And you see it all the time when people say, well, this is how we do things. This is what we're used to. This is why we do it. This is the problem that we've got. No one is focusing on how do we really create something that we've never done before. And to do that, you really have to have big, audacious goals. So I think, just to summarize it there, Craig, the biggest challenge for organizations is how do you separate the budgeting process, which you have to have, from reaching those audacious goals and helping employees to promote that creativity and innovation to get much, much better results. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I remember Bob Proctor talking about large corporate organizations and having a very small creative department and enabling corporations to have that creativity. Don, in your experience, is it similar? What would you say?
Yeah, I think Reem is spot on with her observations. And there's for many years, you've focused on that number, and it's all been about finance. And I think what you see today in the market is this change is actually being amplified in its importance by the generational shift that's going on. There's a group coming into the workforce now that wants to, much more than a job, much more than a paycheck. It's not just about hitting that number and doing the financial things. They're looking to be engaged. They're looking to contribute, be recognized. And the corporations that are able to make that shift and empower those people and make them feel that they are part of a culture and a vision, they're going to see remarkable changes in their results.
That enablement side. Pradnya, let's talk about that corporate enablement. You've been in corporate sales and in sales enablement and execution in really large Fortune 500 companies. So in your opinion, what do you think can be tweaked in that area to enhance sales enablement?
Great question, Craig. Let me begin answering that question with a quote. John Ruskin puts it beautifully. He said that education is not teaching people what they do not know. Education is about teaching people to behave as they do not behave. So in my opinion, there should be a two-pronged approach to sales enablement. You have to give sellers the prerequisite knowledge, and then you have to enable them on how to execute against that knowledge. In other words, I'll say you have to impart product and services knowledge to your sellers, but in addition, you have to help them become their best versions as sellers. Now, to help you understand this, I'm going to use a rhetoric question. So Craig, let's say two sellers are working for the same company. They're selling in the same market. They're selling the same product. They have gone through the same enablement. Yet, Why does their performance differ? And intuitively, people would say that, it's that top seller's mindset. It's his confidence, it's his attitude, it's his grit. But Craig, if we were to shake hands, I can feel your hand. Where is your mindset, your confidence, your grit, your attitude? And that's what needs to be altered for them to be able to perform at their best. In other words, it's that invisible side of their personality, their thoughts, their beliefs, their mental habits, their behaviors ultimately shape their results, their quota attainment. Yeah. So that's really, in a nutshell, what it is. And another contributing factor that's worth highlighting here is the knowing-doing gap. Big corporate organizations, we enable sellers on product, services, market, which is, again, essential. This enablement allows them to really develop their perspective on the market and develop their skill set. But ultimately, your conscious mind that holds the knowledge is only responsible for 2 to 4% of your perceptions, behaviors, and results. The 96 to 98% of their perception, behavior, and results are controlled by their pattern, their condition, their program mind, which runs them on autopilot. You see, and that's what we call the knowing-doing gap. They know a lot, yet only 20% of the sellers truly execute against it, right? So it's that knowing-doing gap that we really have to help the sellers close. And that's where helping sellers understand, who they are, what mind is, how mind operates on the inner plane, what's the relationship of the mind to their behavior and their results is really, really going to come handy. Because ultimately, the behavior is a secondary cause, right? And the primary cause is in their conditioned thinking. For example, the sellers know in order for them to overachieve their quota, they have to have 3 to 5x worth of a pipeline, which means they have to prospect on a daily basis. Everybody knows it. It's talked about ad nauseum, yet not everybody does it. Why? A great example of a knowing-doing gap. So in closing, what I would say on this is that, there's a great quote by an ex-CEO of one of the Fortune 500 medical device companies. And he said in his TED Talk that we don't always get what we deserve in life, but we almost always get what we expect. And that expectation is a state of mind, which can help the sellers execute against the knowledge that they have to get the most ROI.
That mindset, that paradigm, and bridging that gap between what people know they should be doing and actually what they're doing. That's a huge thing. People often do the same things again and again and again, and they don't actually revisit that and think, why am I doing what I'm doing and the way that I'm doing, and how can I change that? That actually takes an intervention, doesn't it? So Don, thinking about what Pradnya's just said, those insights, there's a definition of insanity, when we do the same thing again and again and again, but we're expecting different results. So Don, what would you say needs to really change with the traditional approach to training so that these global organizations can really change the mindset, change the approach, and change the results?
Yeah, I think, Craig, that there are two major things that we're going to see that the corporations need to do. The first one is these enablement programs. What we've done for years and years now is train knowledge, skills. Corporations really need to leverage that and continue it, but introduce the behavioral. And what that means is really recognizing how your beliefs, your attitude, your expectations, your self-image, how do all of those things impact the outcome and the results that you get. And once we can embed that into the training, this is really the next wave of empowering the workforce. And what's going to happen is once we start to do that, we're going to see a quantum leap in results, and corporations are going to be able to get so much more from their existing teams simply by focusing in on this behavioral change as well as the knowledge and the skills we've traditionally looked at. The second area that needs to be looked at is this move from event-based training to more continuous blended learning. So behavioral change, as we all know, requires repetition, requires reinforcement. We need to practice it. We need to embed it into really our DNA and our way of behaving. And we have to be able to overcome these things like inertia, the fear and doubt that we may have about making change and how those hold us in our old patterns and our way of interacting and doing things. So once we do that, many organizations look at training as time out of the field or time away from the main task. And that mentality, I think, has to change for corporate America to say, no, it's not time away from the work. It's actually investment in our own improvement for ourselves and our teams. And it's an ongoing thing that we embed in our daily and weekly work habits, our workflows, our agendas, our calendar. Once we do that, I think corporations are going to see results and impact that are way beyond their wildest dreams.
Right. Large organizations making that change, it's very challenging. I think that blended learning approach is critically important. I think that's a great insight. I remember when I was working with the New Zealand Defence Force and we were moving training programs from being physical to being online as much as we could to enable people to stay in their role, stay in deployment anywhere around the world, but continue their career training, their career progression, making sure that they did not have to leave their deployment to continue their training. Because often people would have 2 or 3 months off deployment, back in New Zealand, being trained on the base, but the disconnect between day-to-day life and the training they were receiving was huge. So the sooner we could get people back into their real work environments, on deployment again, and their training, the time to getting people certified and experienced and having expertise in their roles with that training was incredibly shortened. People became more effective, they could increase in their careers, they were able to achieve those big, hairy, audacious goals. And I think there was less of that sandbagging as well that Reem mentioned. Reem, what do you think?
I think you're spot on there, and so is Don. Thank you for that. But research, there's a lot of research around this globally, and it suggests that there's two things where really high-performing organisations focus on, and one of it is coaching for transformation within an organisation, and the other one is how do you encourage conflict in the right way within an organisation. And so that whole coaching piece and the whole repetition piece and the old bringing it to become practical where it's part of your day-to-day activity. It's not just an additional training that you leave your desk, you go and do the training for 2 or 3 days, you come back to your desk and you're basically going back to the exact same behaviour before you went to the training. It's all around really embedding it into day-to-day activities and becoming a real mindset. So for me personally, what I do, and I really have been working with a lot of teams in a lot of different areas, is you need to do that. You work on that mindset piece right up front. It's the foundation to all training. Right? And I often say, don't bother with doing any negotiation training, sales training, any, coaching training without that mindset piece and the repetition where it becomes, the dialogue becomes day-to-day. What is that big audacious goal that you just referred to, Craig? What is it that you really, really want? And then think about it. Well, how are you going to do it? Rather than thinking about all the problems that you're currently having, right? Putting barriers in front of that, and you put barriers in front of yourself as to how you're not going to achieve it. It just takes constant repetition and on-the-job training.
We always see in organizations there are those people or there are those teams, and they're smaller, they're the 20%, and they're producing the 80% of the results. And so I think there's a ton of data around that 80-20 rule. And Brian, you would have seen this in the industries you've worked in as well, that even though there's this moving target as performance moves along and quotas move along and deadlines move along, we always want our 80% to achieve that performance level that the 20% is, so the whole organization grows. So working with that top 20%, how do we flip that, Brian? How do we flip that around so that we can increase performance across the board for everybody, so that everyone's performance is improving? Bridging that knowing doing gap.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Craig, and I have seen that, especially at GE. It's a global organization with many moving parts, and what you're talking about is referred to as the Pareto principle. And it's a well-known principle in corporations, especially in sales. And the real question we need to ask is, why is this, or how do we fix it? I think corporations have gotten so used to that principle that they accept it. See, we challenge it. If you're going to have an 80-20 rule, why not flip it? Now, that may sound overly simple, but it really comes down, and you guys, the other panelists have said, it comes down to the mindset, the individual mindsets, and the corporate culture, right? The corporate mindset. So this is not just an individual thing. It's also a corporate paradigm and a corporate culture. And again, we hear these statistics and we never bother to challenge them, right? And attack at the root of the cause and really try to fix them. And that's what we do when we're working with clients and corporations. We highlight that and say, we challenge that paradigm, right? The paradigm of the 80-20 rule. And the bottom line, Craig, is you can take the very top salesperson in any organization, analyze their paradigms or their mindset or their set point, and then get the whole sales team to operate at that same level of effectiveness and awareness. The sad thing is most corporations are just not aware of this and they just don't do it. You know, you can take the top salesperson in any organization, pull them aside and say, you know, how many people in this company that are your peers have offered to buy you breakfast and pick your brain on what you're doing? And the answer 9 times out of 10 is none. It's not shared information, you know. And then the other part of it, Craig, is that top performer, that 1%er, is what we probably call an unconscious competent. They may be operating at a very, very high level, but unable to articulate, unable to teach that information to another person, right? And you can see this, everybody, whether it's an individual corporation, everybody has a paradigm, and a paradigm is neither good nor bad. It just is. It's that mental set point. I like to refer to it as a person's operating system, like Craig 1.0, right? So how do we get you to Craig 2.0? And that's the same thing as asking Windows 7 to all of a sudden be Windows 10, right? Windows 7 can never be Windows 10. It needs an upgrade. And when we're talking about the subconscious mind, it's really very similar to that, right? It's just a person's paradigm is their subconscious awareness, their subconscious programming that's responsible for 96% of the habitual behavior. Now, in sales, that's very important. If 96% of what people are doing, as Pradnya said, their results are a direct, indirect proportion to their paradigm or their set point. So the reason that there's such a thing as the 80-20 rule in the first place is because we are not fundamentally taught this stuff in schools or colleges. Like Reem said, the foundational work about our subconscious programming, how to use it, what it is, and how to change that paradigm, right? No matter what college you go to or anything like that. So nobody's really training on paradigms, especially in my experience in corporate America, what they are and more importantly, how to change them. So I think that's fundamental to learn how to do that in the corporate world. And again, I think one of the fundamental problems with traditional sales training is they become complacent with this 80-20 rule, right? And corporations become complacent with it. What that really means is 80% of their sales training budget's going out the window and they're okay with it, right? Because we've all bought into this 80-20 rule and nobody's really trying to change it. So when we work with clients, we really go to the root cause and we teach people fundamentally how to shift paradigms towards the result they want. And that's the key here. Now, we can do that with an individual or we can do that with a 1,000-person sales team. It's really no different. There's different ways to do it, you know. The other part of this, the subconscious mind, a lot of people don't know, is it's a cybernetic mechanism. Right, it operates much like a thermostat or a GPS. It has a program, and it just operates based on that. And again, what most people, and especially most corporations, don't know is it's really impossible to outperform our paradigms. We can't outperform our conscious awareness of how this all works, right? But we can change the paradigm, and that's the key. And this is why traditional sales training, again, is really going to only impact the people that are already performing at a very high level, right? The top performers in companies, they're eager. They're at the front row. They're taking notes. They're using the information. They're putting it into action. But they can't articulate why, and they can't translate to the team. And that's where we come in, right? I like to say when we're working with a company, you know, I want you to focus on doing what you do, building computers or building engines. Let us focus on your people, what we're professionals at. And again, what we do with our clients is really that foundational training first and foremost on how to change that paradigm. So Craig, to answer your question, and long-winded, it is quite possible to flip the 80-20 rule and get the 80% of an organization operating at that top 1% level. And the other part of this, Craig, is there is roughly 10% of a management team or a sales organization that are not going to be impacted at all. They're probably just in the wrong job in the first place, right? So when we're working with companies, we say, listen, our job is to take that 80% of the middle pack, get them to perform like the top 10%. What you want to do with the bottom 10% is up to you. But I think what we're highlighting here really, Craig, is then when you layer on the sales training and then, the higher level sales trainings, they stick. they go right to the subconscious mind, and people actually take action, which is what Pradnya was highlighting there.
It seems that paradigms are not only individual, but they become corporate as well. And so organizations think as a group, this group think approach, as well as individuals, and both levels need to be worked on, need to be attacked, need to be grown. And awareness, I guess, is the beginning of understanding. Pradnya, would you have any final thoughts or any final comments around that bridging that gap for people?
Reem said it beautifully. She said that, you begin with an end in mind. Yeah. So in the corporate world, we talk about SMART goals, and R in that SMART word stands for realistic goals. Now, it's great, but yet at the same time, we're not really tapping into our imagination, what gets us excited. So my mentors have taught me that there is ABCs of goals. Most of the time when we set the A-type goal, we know how to do it. And to give you an example, if you have a wonderful car, you can buy another car from the same manufacturer, just a different make. It's not a goal. It's a task. I mean, you can buy it, but it's a task. Now, B-type goal is where, you look at your past and you intellectualize, you speculate how far you can go, and you say, well, this is how far I'm going to go. Now, you think you can get there. That's the goal that you think you can do. But really, if you look back on your life, the times when you really made the quantum leap is when you really wanted something that excited you and something that scared you at the same time, and you did not know the how. And it applies to the professional life. It applies to the personal life. I mean, I'm digressing, but, when you're in a relationship and when you propose to somebody, you really are excited about that path. You're also scared and you do not know what the response is going to be, yet you go after it. And that gives you that, that brings in that factor of excitement in your day-to-day operation. So I think in a sales organization, again, Reem was pointing out how we set low attainment goals and we sandbag those. So instead, if we could raise the bar and say, let's have our sales team set the C-type goal, because not only have we enabled them on the knowledge part about services, about products, about market, but we have also given them the very mindset that can take them there. Then why not help them set those C-type goals, which are much far stretch goals that can really allow them to grow from within to get to those goals. So that's what I would say, to complement what Brian said here, to be able to really get people excited that they lock in and they bring their potential to the surface, as opposed to just doing same old, same old.
Really enlightening, and I'm sure there are many good conversations that can come after this as well. Before we wrap up, just some final thoughts about this and enabling corporations, global corporations, to really raise performance across the board. Does anyone have any final comments?
The biggest asset, the most important asset, is the people. It's as simple as that. And I know from my experience that the vast majority of people want to do really, really well. They really want to. They come into organizations being very excited. Right? They just want to prove themselves. And we have to believe that. Right? So we have fundamentally, people are good. So people want to deliver the best results they possibly can. What we have to do as an organization, in terms of global organization, is enhance that and give them the opportunity to. Right, so not allowing them to get into a rut, right? So like giving them all the channels that we can to really bring out the best in them. And again, the old 80-20 rule, I'm so passionate about that, because you can make a huge difference with people if you give them the right support through the coaching. But then what you do is you reach a certain stage, and guess what? That new 80-20 rule, you can work on it again. And then after that, you can work on it again. It is continuous. And when you have everyone in the organization with that cultural mindset, the results are absolutely incredible. And you've got a really, really powerful place where people want to come to work, where people want to contribute more, where people continuously want to give you even more results than what you're expecting as an organization. And that becomes a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's great. And Don, from you?
Yeah, I think I would just go back to something, Craig, that you mentioned at the beginning that Bob Proctor talked about, which is, you know, when you look at some of the organizations and how you can get people energized and just, you know, seeing the difference in people when they come to work and they're turned on and they're emotionally connected to what they're doing. That's what we're talking about unleashing here is getting people outside that box and really, as all the other presenters have said, really wanting to contribute and really wanting to show up at work. And I've had the pleasure in my career of being with teams like that at a point in time where the results were just way beyond what anybody would have expected. And those people come out of those types of projects. Unfortunately, it's maybe not a lasting thing for them, but they always remember that in their career. And they say, man, if I could do that every single day, you know, the world would be different. So I think that's what we're talking about trying to change here in a structured way when we look at this behavioral and mindset training is really get these people linked to their passion and you'll be amazed what comes out. So,
yeah, that's powerful. Brian or Pradnya, anything from you to close up?
Yeah, Craig, I just wanted to highlight that this, you know, we talk about mindset training. A lot of potential listeners might think it's an ethereal or a theological thing, and we're really talking about the sciences behind how we operate as human beings. And I just like to highlight an example. I mean, the Google Corporation, Alphabet Corporation, right? They do mindset training like we're talking about with every single employee, right? And they have a waiting list for people that just want to work there from around the world. They use attraction marketing. They built a corporate paradigm and a corporate environment. They don't have attrition. You know, I've worked with some companies that have issues with, you know, we don't want to invest too much in our clients because our employees, because, you know, what if they leave? But you take a company like Google that has a different corporate paradigm. They're not worried about their employees leaving because they've created such an environment. As a matter of fact, I read a book, I think it's called Peak Performance, where they highlighted the fact that Google actually has policies that people cannot work more than X amount of hours in a day. I think it's 12 or 14, because they have a problem with it. They have people that are so passionate because the environment they've created that they won't leave. Now think about that one. If you're a CEO of a corporation and you're investing in your people because they do something, the proof is in the pudding, one of the largest corporations in the world, and they invest heavily in mindset training for every last employee. That whole department centered around that. And that's really what we're bringing to the table here. It's I don't want to say it's new because it's not, but I don't think it's the typical, actually the evidence is there, right? The 80-20 rule still exists across corporate America and global corporations. So I would say that, you know, just take a look at the Google Corporation and what they're doing, because that's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about investing in your people. Your people are your company. You know, corporate paradigms and corporate culture.
I think when it gets to that point, when the culture and the corporate mindset is so strong and people have bought into it and people are achieving personal goals as well as corporate goals, and there's really good alignment in between that too, your people don't want to leave. I remember when I was in Sydney, Ream, down there in Australia, and I went there as part of the Google Certified Innovator Program, and I was there in the Google headquarters, and we had people who are new to the organization and people who had been there for a long time. And as we walked around the building, looked at all these innovation spaces like whiteboards hanging from the ceilings where people could move them all around and brainstorm together in teams and work on their goals and be creative. Your picture is actually painted onto the wall of the building inside. And as we walked through the corridors, there were all these people in different attire, like sporting clothing or reading a book or flying in an airplane or skiing. Whatever it was that was their personal passion that they were known for was actually painted onto the wall. It was like, you're here, you're part of the infrastructure as much as you're part of the human part of the organization. You're part of who Google really is. And the most exciting thing that people talked about was this recognition of being part of the team. It was so important to them. They wanted that. And no one wants to leave. They just transfer between departments because they have another exciting initiative that they want to contribute. Do you have any final comments or thoughts?
Yes, absolutely, Craig. I think my peers just really brought it home very well. So just a couple of additional points that come to my mind. Mind operates in the exact same way in each and every one of us. What differentiates or causes the difference in performance is how that mind is programmed. And that programming happens in our little life and environmentally and all of that. So I think corporations, as they become aware of the fact that this programming can be shifted, then they can really unlock the potential of their people.
It was. It's been fantastic. Pradnya, Reem, Don, and Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. Incredibly valuable insight. Underneath this video in the discussion area, there will be links and descriptions of all of you, how to view your focus teasers so that people can engage with you after this. We just really want to thank you for your time today and wish you every success, and really look forward to speaking with you again as we tackle some other topics in the future as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today.